Hi everyone, we're back here with a topic that might be again unusual, but that's me. This is a very random video. I was walking home and I realized that I think I need to talk about this. There are so many human rights justice warriors out there, both online and offline. There are so many pro-Israel activists also online, so many influencers. And each has its own legitimacy, each has its own goals and aims and their own personality and characters that they bring into their work. And hopefully most of them really are working towards a higher good and not driven by the influencing factor or clout that, that platform can give them. When it comes to me and my approach right now at this given time of my life, because let's be honest, it's shifting. So like what I've been posting 7 years ago on my Facebook that has almost 10,000 followers, but Facebook has been censored me all the time. It's very, very different than what I am posting now. It has a reason because I personally evolve, I see things differently and I approach things differently. And therefore, I also approach my whole advocacy work very differently. Whereas in my 20s, I was definitely one of those, who are on the street, loud and with the flag, very visibly protesting things. And I do think that street activism still has its legitimacy. We need to show up when there is a need for us showing up. However, when that's not the case, I believe that basically advocacy work, such as most of the things in life, goes down and boils down to psychology. And don't get scared, it's not like I'm going into a shrinking therapy with my post. But yesterday, someone, and it was so heartwarming, because that person wrote to me after one of the quotes that seems to be like a self-help quote. He wrote to me, how much truth is in that? If I am not changing myself, how am I demanding other people to change? And this is where my advocacy work is shifting from my original characters, because I myself am shifting. And perhaps this is where you don't get what you might expect from my page, and that's totally fine. And if it doesn't resonate with you, that's also totally fine. But here is what I believe in right now. Me sharing the horror stories of what's going on in the world and how Jew hatred is just so normalized. Yes, that can give me likes, that can give me new followers, because that is trending. That is what the algorithm helps. That is what the psychology of people on social media are demanding. They want to be outraged, they want to be triggered. And again, it has its legitimacy. So I do share news, let them be bad or good. I do share them. But the emphasis is not necessarily on that, because at the end of the day, what is my goal? To share the bad news that every other media outlet shares? Or can I go a step further and actually try to trigger some kind of change? So sharing the news and the bits of news is important, especially when, mainstream media would not cover. So it's safe to assume that we reach more audience and a bigger audience. But it's also safe to assume that we are in our echo chamber, and hence you get the likes and hence you get the new followers. But what if we take this a step further? And we really go down to the basics of how humans work. And that is, if you don't change yourself, nothing around you is going to change. My perception about the Jewish people and Israel definitely didn't change because of social media and any online influencers. Maybe back then it was not even such a big thing, but even today, when I'm reading those memes and those posts, and I think back of who I was and how someone who is holding anti-Semitic views might think, that wouldn't change the needle. And again, I'm not delegitimizing their advocacy work. It's just since I've been on the other side, this is my approach based on my personal experience. So this is why I'm so big on sharing other bits of my life as well, because I am a human. I'm not simply someone who held anti-Semitic views and now is so unapologetically Zionist and standing up for the Jewish people. People have so many layers to them. And this is why it also doesn't work where you meet someone who is opposing your thoughts and then you're just gonna bombard them with your point of views and say, you need to believe this, you must believe this. That person will not change. But if you start triggering small things, that person might change at the end of the day. I needed to realize that I was holding anti-Semitic views. Nobody ever told me that I was holding anti-Semitic views. And I had to arrive personally to that state of mind where I was okay to question my own views. Is it easy? Of course not. Sit down with yourself and think of something that you are so confidently believing in it. You believe that you are right and correct on that. And start questioning that. Are you really? Who told you that it's like that? How did you arrive to that conclusion? And peel off the onion layers, and then you're gonna get to the core of the essence there. But this is work. So changing people who are holding anti-Semitic views is like a layered process. It's a journey. Some people are anti-Semitic because they are ignorant, because they don't know better. So we need to educate. It's extremely important. And here in brackets, I'm gonna give a piece of advice to people. Like, when you actually educate people, don't come from a very higher level and don't be condescending. So many posts when it starts like, oh, the non-Jews. That's already losing your audience, because who wants to feel that you are talking down to them? Imagine someone is educating you about the LGBTQ plus, community, and they come from the high horse attitude saying, oh, the heteros. You can't. You need to be human to human. So even though if you have a very bad, opinion about certain non-Jews right now because they don't understand your collective suffering, the way towards them is not putting them down, because again, it's psychology. Do you want to be friend with someone who is putting you down? Obviously not. Okay, brackets closed. So I don't want to make this video extremely long, but I did want to give a little bit of explanation why I'm so big on talking about self-development. And I don't want it to come across as the new age mumbo jumbo, but if you are not self-aware, unfortunately, you cannot make a difference in this world. The change in the world is always the byproduct of the change within yourself. And this is really, I think, where advocacy work goes a little bit off, when we are just, trying to push our opinion on other people without them being receptive for that. It's like you cannot offer a constructive criticism to someone who didn't ask for that criticism. So again, we need to educate people, but educate from a point of view that, okay, look at that person if that would be your child and you want to educate, as opposed to, oh, I'm here and he is here. No, we all are the product of our own environment. So that person might have grown up in a very different environment than you. Hence, he has absolutely no idea what constitutes as anti-Semitism. Then there are those who grew up with an ideologically driven hatred towards Jews. That's again a whole different group, how you approach. Well, what if next time someone who is, protesting with the BDS, you try to look at that person as a 7-year-old kid who is being abused at home, and hence he doesn't know how to find himself, so he finds his creative outlet by protesting with the BDS, which again, if we would dig into the individuals who are marching there, most of the cases that would be the situation. Such as one time, I give you an example that a psychologist woman talked about a girl who was 16 or 17 and she was having, black nails and tattoos all over, and she was like the coolest chick in town, but she also had tattoos with swastikas on. Eventually, when this psychologist dig deeper, that girl was a little frightened girl who had no idea how to feel safe under her own skin or within her own body, and hence she was revolting against everything and anything. It doesn't mean that she was actually ideologically an anti-Semite. She was suffering inside and was just looking for attention. So most people who are so outrageous towards society are suffering inside. Again, I'm not asking to hug your enemies and all this kumbaya thing, but what I am trying to invoke here is a little bit of empathy and compassion towards other people, and maybe give the benefit of doubt that sometimes the hatred is not really coming from a deep engraved hatred, but actually a deep engraved individual pain. Again, there are exceptions for everything. I'm just trying to give you the general idea how I am approaching now advocacy work per se. And the bottom line and the conclusion is, since I myself went through this whole transition from someone holding anti-Semitic views to who I am today, I do not really believe that I would have changed purely by social media posts telling me how bad the situation is when it comes to Jew hatred and anti-Semitism, or look, there was another Israeli who got attacked in Israel. None of this would have changed my perception, because it was just something, you know, I already grew up on. So I had to go deeper and ask myself tough questions. And this is what I'm trying to trigger my audience also on the platforms of mine, to go deeper than who you think you are today. Because most of the things that you know today were told, and maybe deep inside you actually should ask certain questions. Anyway, I hope that shed a little bit of more light on why I'm sharing more on self-development and self-awareness as well. And if you have questions, obviously feel free to ask. I hope it resonates with you, because really one individual can spread so much light into the world, and I really hope that you are going to aim to be that light instead of just, you know, seeing the dark everywhere, because it's not as horrible. We are just so many humans with so much complexities, and we need to really understand that.